A friend of mine recently asked me about helping him out with his entry, doing some design on it, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to show how you can use photographs in SketchUp to create a three-dimensional model. So I've opened up SketchUp, and the first thing I do is take the person off. I don't really need that person there. We have some photographs I took of his entry area. One of these images is a good starting point, the front door. And we'll start with that one. It's good because we know a size of the door and we can use that to help scale our model. So I'm going to go ahead and make a rectangle here on the screen, the shape of the size of the front door. So rectangle tool, and I'm going to kind of look at the screen. If I look downwards, I'll create a planar rectangle down on the surface of this axis. I'm going to look straight at it, so it'll become, basically a vertical rectangle. And I'll make it 36 inches wide by 80 inches tall. It's a standard residential door. And I'm going to use that to help me guide the placement and the size of the photographs. We could also do this later, but right now it's really helpful just to have some size to go by. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use push-pull and give it some depth. I like to have SketchUp models have some volume, even though I could probably use it like a skin, because we're not really building the building so much as I am the entry area, which is kind of a void. But I think it's going to be better in the long run. And one last thing I like to do while I work on this is that it's very critical that our red, green, and blue axes are always in the right orientation. And when working with the photograph, sometimes I can get myself confused. So I like to set the settings to begin with that way. And I can do that through my Styles menu. I'm going to hit this Home button. The Home button is the current style being used. And that's the one here. That's just standard one, architectural design. And I will go to Edit. When I edit the style, I've got different options. So this is options for the lines, there's options for the planes, options for the background, for watermarks, and then for model settings. And we're actually going to use one of them when we do PhotoMatch. In here, I do want the edges. And right now, this is fine. This is the stuff we can change on our edge look, how it looks here on the screen. But here's the setting that I want to modify. Instead of all the same, I'm going to go by axis. You'll see right away that my model has changed in the red, green, and blue lines. If they're parallel, they'll show up like that. Anything that's not parallel, for example, something like this, will show up as a black line. So I know that's not in the red, green, or blue axis. And that's going to be helpful because with PhotoMatch, sometimes the perspective throws things off a little bit. So let's bring in the first photograph. File, Import. And here's my photos. I put them all here with some notes I took. I'm going to start with this first one. This is the entry area that we're going to be looking at. And I'm just going to make the model for today's video. I'm going to do Import. I'm going to make sure this says all supported image types. If by any chance when you bring in images you don't see them, just make sure that's set at all supported image types. I think the default is SketchUp files, because typically you'll be bringing in components and you want SketchUp files brought in. But we're going to be using all supported image types, and that gives me the JPEGs, the PNGs, and so forth. Because I'm going to use a photo to create the model, I'm going to use New Match Photo. If I bring it in as an image, it comes in like almost like a photograph, or comes in like a picture that's framed. It's just like this picture that you can put on. If I bring it as a texture, it's going to come in and you're going to put it on a surface and basically stretch it. It becomes like the textures in the paint bucket tool. I want a New Match Photo. And what I'll do is it'll change the grid axis of my SketchUp model, and you'll see we can then adjust the grid axis and work with the model. So I'm going to go ahead and click Import. Most of the time when people see this, it's kind of like, what's going on here? I broke the machine or something, but it's not that hard to determine. You're going to get these bars here, and these bars are basically showing the perspective vanishing point in the green axis. This one's here showing perspective vanishing points in the red axis, and of course the blue strip and down. And this yellow box is the origin. That's where we drew our door, in the origin. So basically I'm going to click and drag these around in locations on the photograph. And while I do that, it's actually changing the perspective of the model. I'll show you what I mean. And by the way, the photograph itself, when you take these photographs, you want to try and take it at an angle as much as possible. I've got a couple of them, and we'll talk about that were a little bit more head-on than it should have been, and how I work around that a little bit. But in this case, I was really focusing on that angle here because I thought that's really what we need to see. So the first thing I'll do is change the origin and move it right to the origin of the doorway. So this is the doorway here. And I like to just change the origin of the doorway right away. Now, the door's going to be about there, and we'll start with that. So that's going to be the corner of the door. And in reality, in perspective, it's going to be probably something like that, right? There's a little bit lost in the perspective of this jam here. Then I'll take and move these around. And the way I like to move them is by grabbing the middles first. If I grab the ends, I'll start changing the warping. I'd like to grab the middles and kind of put them in position. So I'm looking for places that go in the green axis, that vanish to this particular vanishing point. Well, these are all vanishing that way, right? So are these in the Soffit here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag this over to this side. And I'll click and drag this maybe up here, kind of like that. We'll start there. These may be a little too short, but we'll see. And then I'm going to zoom up using the scroll wheel, and I'm going to kind of get then I click the endpoints and I start lining it up. And you'll see right away as I click on my endpoints and start lining it up that the perspective has changed, right? The things are alternating a little bit. Do the same thing over here. And you want to zoom up quite a bit. Now, this is only going to be approximate, right? We're not going to be 100% perfectly right. But it'll give us enough. It'll give us enough that with a few dimensions, perhaps, we could create a model. Over here, the red is going this way to this vanishing point. So we're talking about these here, these over here. Those are the ones I'm going to want to use. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of, again, put the lines roughly where I'm going to go. I could put them here, by the way. Let's put this one over here, just to show you what I'm talking about. So, looking at this one first, I'm kind of get it lined up with something. And I want to be as close as possible as I can be. You notice as soon as we zoom up on the image, it becomes pixelated because it's a raster image, and so you're not going to be super 100% perfect, but it's going to be close enough that we can build with and create a model with, and that's what we're shooting for. And you can see as I move this around, you can see the other lines moving around. That looks pretty good. I think we're going to say that. And I'm looking at this picture right now, and look at this. This is going straight up, right? And sure enough, it's going to straight up in the picture. If this wasn't quite lined up, it'd be angled one way or the other. The other thing I'm going to take a look at over here is our spacing. There are grid lines here. I don't know if you can see these lines here. There's grids. It's basically making a grid in your model and change the perspective. I changed my grid spacing here in Match Photo, and this will come up when you do the Match Photo in SketchUp. This will come up. I changed to 6'8", which is the height of a standard residential door, and that's what this is. This isn't a special tall door. If it is, you change it to whatever height that was. And this is a known entity. I could have picked any one of these features here that I could have a clean dimension for, and it would have been just fine. So I'm going to move this up. So the door is going to be right about there, right? I mean, if you take a look at the picture, there's where the door is right here, right? It's not out here. It's not out here. It's right there. So you do have to be somewhat careful in that regard. And down here, I went to this part of the door, so and went back in space just a little bit where the face of the door is at. We're trying to be as accurate as possible so that any discrepancies I create will be minor. And again, I chose this door as the starting point. That looks good to me. I'm going to say right-click Done, and now I can start using the model. I could have also done this without creating the rectangle first. I just find it useful to have something in my model. Also, if I need to change or adjust anymore, I can use this setting here to readjust things. And again, one of the options is to turn the model off. So if I turn the model off, I just see the lines without the model being in the way. It's personal preference. Not one's better than the other. It's just I prefer to have a little something there to go with. I can go ahead now and right click done, or the button over here done. And I can use a push-pull command and start stretching this box out. Notice when I orbit, I lose my door. That's all right. I'm just kind of stretching the box out. To get back, I just click on this button right here, this scene tab, and lo and behold, there it is. And I can just kind of push up and push down, go back to the scene tab. All right, that's starting to look pretty good. At this point, I'm going to just go right click on the surface and select Project Photo. What that does is it basically puts the photo on the surface as a texture. Whenever you see this, it means that parts of the photo might be trimmed off or something. I typically say no. If I say yes, what will happen is you'll have these little miniature tiny lines in hidden mode. So it breaks the surface, and typically I don't like that. So trim faces, no. And so now if I orbit, you can see right now if I orbit, the picture's on the box now. Now if I keep on going outwards some more, it repeats itself. It's just like a texture. So looking at this, I'm going to come into this point right here. This is where it turns the corner. So I'm going to come into this point right here, right about there. And for right now, I'm just going to come into this point right here. That's not quite right, by the way. I'll just keep it out a little bit. I'd like to about this point. All right. Tap the control key and come out a bit. I'm going to then push-pull this out a little bit so I have a surface on 90 degrees from here that I can project the photo onto. Click on the Image, Scene tab, and right-click, Project Photo. No. Okay. So now, if I orbit, I can start seeing the side view. And then I can go ahead and use push-pull on here to go to this corner. As I created this shape, I have this extra lines back here. It's a good habit to clean up. I don't need these here. I'd rather just kind of clean up any extra lines that I don't need. You can see how the red, green, and blue are really helping me to make sure things are lined up and that I've not gone off axis. And what's helpful too is that I can bring this whole surface down to there. So there's the walls, right? Here's where the wall ceiling or wall soffit meets. Okay. Click on that scene tab again. And we'll select that surface here. Project Photo. Now I'll show you what I mean. If I do trim partial visible faces, this part of the photo is not there, so they'll trim it off. You'll see what I mean here. I'll say yes. Now look what happens then. If I pull this out, it's got that funky thing going on, and now I'll have to erase that line or something. In other words, that surface is supposed to be continuous, and it isn't. So I typically don't do the trim partial faces. I'm sure there might be a time when I would use it, but right now, I'm actually going to move this up a little bit forward. So I'll go right to the corner, right click, project photo, trim faces, no. And so what happens is it's starting to repeat the picture from over here, starting to repeat it over here. So I'll have the doorway back again. You know, there's a door happening over here. Warped, of course, because the angle is a little different in relationship. Also, when I started my modeling, I did on the origin, and I put my origin here in the photograph. You want to start with the origin and keep in the origin. In other words, I would not draw this face out here with this photograph. It is misleading. You'll never get it. It'll line up kind of funny. You'll say, what's going on here? Always start with the origin and push-pull out, push-pull up, or draw rectangles from the origin so that it's all square. Also, I chose a point in the building and not on the ground line, for example. I didn't choose this because it may or may not be level. Now this one I think looks pretty level, but in reality, the ground line around a building isn't level. So you'd pick things like the last board or the edge of the door or something ideally that you have some dimensions for. And this could also be done later. We could resize this image later if necessary. I'm going to go ahead and push-pull this up to that bottom of the wall there at that point. Tap the control key, control push-pull down. I took a measurement. It's 5.5 inches. So I know that's 5.5 inches from the door. That step down is 5.5 inches, and this is another 5.5 inches to the ground itself. So I'll move this out to here right now. Click on this image scene tab. Select the floor, right-click, project photo, Okay, and now I will push pull this back. Oops, don't want to move it that way. Push pull it back to about there. And I'll do a little quick dimension here. It's supposed to be 27.5. So you can see I'm very, very close. I'm within a half an inch. I'm just going to go ahead and push pull this out. Again, I took an actual dimension, so we know it's 27.5. So I'll just do half an inch more, and we're ready to go. We're good for that. Again, clean up. See those lines there? Just clean them up. Clean them up as you go. It becomes a little tedious perhaps, but at the same time, it's going to be helpful in the long run. We don't need these lines here, so let's get rid of them. If we lose an image, click on the Scene tab, right-click on the surface, project photo, okay, and we have it back again. And that looks pretty good for what I need right now. So the next photo I'm going to be putting in is this part right here, so I can get the roof pitch and so forth. And so what I'm going to want to do on this one is change my origin. Remember, our origin started here at this door. Now I want to move the origin to a spot I have on both this photograph and on the new one I'm bringing in. So I'm going to put it right here at this point. So this is the axis tool. I click on here, and I want to keep the red in the red, the green in the green, and the blue in the blue. It would make life easier if it's all the same. So I've moved it that way. You can see green lines go green, red lines go red, blue lines go blue. And then I'm going to angle myself roughly the same way the picture is. And the picture is this front, probably a little bit something like this. So now I can go File, Import. There's a picture there. That looks about right what I want to do. It doesn't have to be super perfect, but you don't want to be too off from the picture you're bringing in. And so here's my image, my new image. Look, I have a new Scene tab. My point here is going to be, this is the origin. Remember, this yellow square is the origin, and I basically am saying that's where it's going to, right there. And once I have the origin in place, then I start looking at where the red and the green and the blue are going. Well, the green's going this way, right? So I can use, from this photograph, I can use these lines here. And the red's going this way. So I'm just going to go ahead and start putting in these where they go. So again, I move it in with the middle and grab the middle of the lines. And then I just look at the end points and try to line them up as close as possible. And for the front, for this area right here, I'm just going to go ahead and use this line here. Ideally, you want a long line. You know, you don't want to be too short. Ideally, you want a long line. And you can see the other model picking up from behind. Again, if the model is a problem, just take it off. In this case, I don't find it a problem. And now we need to, again, resize this. And the spacing doesn't matter so much as it does this photograph. So in other words, I want this model that I see in the background to kind of line up with what's going on back there. And I can just do that by moving my cursor on the blue and just changing the scale. Right? So this is pretty close, right? Look at the picture of the door. Look at the steps here. I think that's pretty close in perspective. So this back here is the existing model. This is the photograph I have over here. And I would say this is pretty close to what I need. And I'm doing, yep. And also I'm checking the blue axis to make sure that it is indeed pretty straight, and it looks pretty straight. Now remember, in real life, things aren't 100% vertical or 100% horizontal, and so there will be some slight discrepancy in the model. And I'm just going to maybe, I think it's this one I need to move just a little bit. I think we're going to be good. I'd call that good. Done, or right-click Done, either this done or this done. And I'm going to right-click Project Photo. And it's going to say, do you want to override existing materials? If you remember, we put a photograph on here. So do I want to overwrite it? Well, yeah, let's overwrite it. I'd like this picture to be there. And now I can orbit and push-pull this end out to the other corner. Perfect. Okay, let's take a look at the image here. So at this point, I'm going to want to come up the height and also get this overhang working for, this peak. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, actually I'm going to draw a line right here. Just break the surface. I'm going to pull this up. Okay. Pull this up in the blue here to where the peak is. Now, it's going to be kind of tricky because it's about right here. This is where the peak is of the wall. Remember, it's not the peak of the overhang, it's the peak of the wall. Because that's what I'm using. I'm using the wall to make the shape, not the overhang. I have extra lines here. And again, if you take a look, here's monochrome mode. This just shows us the if I try to pull this out, this is not broken. It's just going to be a mess to pull out. So I'm just going to draw a line from here to here to break this surface. And I'm going to erase this line here. So then I can pull this out, whatever distance I think I need. And the same thing over here. If I draw a line from this point back in the green, and pull this out as well. So now I've got this pulled out. If I look back at textured mode, shaded with textures, I can see the overhang. And now I can just double check and kind of make a good guesstimate on how much overhang it is. I'll use the tape measure tool. So from here to, it looks about here, it's about 8 inches it looks like. How about over here? Let's do the middle, might be a little bit better because I can see a little clearer. About 9 inches, 8 inches, 9 inches. I'm just going to go ahead and just say 9 inches. So I'm lining it up. I'm clicking here. I'm clicking on the surface, click, and then clicking on this surface here to line up. And then I'm going to go out 9 inches. So both are out 9 inches. Now it looks to me like there's like a little straight portion before it goes to the gutter. So let's see, if I go up in the straight portion, maybe about 2 inches, maybe, give it a take. So you can see a little bit, the model is just going to help us. I'm working on the entry. I'm not really working on this piece, so I don't have to be super, super exact, but it'd be nice to have a relatively accurate image or shape to look at. I also know that this line here is the middle of this ridge here, so I can pull it all the way back, right? Once more, I can't stress it enough. To have these lines, red, green, or blue, really are helpful. Once it's modeled, I can probably turn it off. I've actually known some people that keep it on until they actually send out to render, or if they want to do a screen capture, then they'll turn that option off in their styles. I even have a keyboard shortcut so that I can quickly turn it back on and off on that. And you can find videos on YouTube on how to make keyboard shortcuts, and also in the help session in SketchUp. I'm going to select one edge, hold the control key, select the other one, so they're both selected. Use the move tool, and I'm going to go down in the blue. I'm going to lock it in the blue by hitting the up arrow key on my keyboard, lock it in the blue. And don't worry about this blue shading on the piece. It's not going to affect us. And once it gets that tape measure line, I click, and you can see that I have my peak. So I made a couple texture lines, tape measure lines. I made a couple tape measure lines on both sides, 2 inches up. And then here's my roof. While I'm at it, I know that this roof here, that overhangs over here, is the same 2 inches. So I'm going to do push-pull, tap the control key, and kind of start framing that out. And I also know that this roof here, I believe, lines up with the roof below, with the step below. So this roof lines up with the step below. And I'm starting to make this roof shape out. If I look at the first scene tab, I'll just double check here. Yeah, it looks about right. Maybe it goes out a little bit more. Maybe it goes out, let's bring it back here. I think maybe it goes out 3 feet if I remember. There, 3 feet, yeah. I think we measured that as well. So it's 27.5, and then this is 36 up here at the top. Clean up the slides, clean up, always clean up. Sometimes it's better just make it this monochrome view. It's really very helpful when working with photographs. You make sure there's no lines there. So that's good. So see, that's the axis of the first one. And now here, this is the axis of the second image. So there's no extra lines here. I think we're good cleaned up here. And again, this is an angle, so it's going to be black. So I've got this here, I've got that there, looking pretty good. All right, so the third image I'm going to bring in is actually looking from this angle. I'm going to go ahead, let me make sure I have the image proper here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push pull this. Here, this line needs to be cleaned up. I'm going to push pull this to this point because I'm going to have that edge of that wall in my next image. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my axes. I'm going to put it like right here right now. Click. Go across, click, click. So blue's still up, green's still back over. And the view is kind of like this, the new one coming in. So I'm going to kind of go down here and look at this angle. File, import. See that angle right there? Click on that, click on import. And the first thing I'll do is move my origin to where I'm matching. So here's the bottom of the overhang is going to be right about there. So this is our problem. You can see our green axes are kind of funky. And the reason being is that there's not much of an angle here to go by. But I do have this little extension here. Again, I wish it was a little bit more, but it's what we've got. Ideally, you want a little longer line. I probably should have made more of an angled view of this one, but I didn't. So I'm just going to use what I have. It can still be modeled, but we're going to be a little bit more guessing. For example, I think that bar goes that way. I don't have enough of a clear image to verify that. I'll use the bottom for this here. All right, so far so good. The red is really easy. I mean, I can just see right now. I can use this one up here. And again, the longer lines really are helpful because then on a long line you don't get as much distortion as a short one. Like these short green ones are just almost guesstimates, to be honest with you. Here, let's get this over here. So I've got the origin set. I've got the heights kind of set. Now I need to kind of adjust my model to the photograph. For example, my stoop is up here, which needs to go down there. So let's kind of get that down a little bit more. What we're doing is we're changing the scale of things. I'm going to zoom up a little bit more to be more exact. There we go. All right. So this is starting to become a little problematic here. Just kind of double checking some things. You can see this is supposed to be the bottom of the door, so I'm just going to might just kind of give it a little bit more there. So maybe the stoop is a little bit off. I'm not sure, but this looks about right. So here's the photograph. Here's the model. Photograph model. Yeah, that's what I wanted to see. That looks pretty good. The doorway. Look, the doorway lines up here, lines up there. So maybe this will have to be just a little bit off, and it could be my angle's a little bit off. I don't know. But I'm going to right click done. So I'm going to orbit, do control push pull. All right, let's go back to the image now. So then I'm going to push pull this up. Now it looks to me like the overhang and this are at the same plane. If you look at the image, I remember something like that. You can almost see that the soffit keeps going. So we've got it there. So I'm just going to keep that. Project, right click, project photo, no. Right click, project photo, no. All right, so here we go. So we've got this piece here. All right, now I'm gonna push pull this forward some. And I think it's supposed to go almost to the edge of the step, the stoop. So let's see what, if I select this and push forward to there, yeah, that line kind of lines up. That line lines up pretty well. So I think I'm okay on this. I think I'm okay. Now this surface on the side got kind of wonky, but we'll take care of that later. But click on this image. Yeah, I think this will be good, and this looks about right. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that line, and I'm going to just leave that there. I think we're ready for the next image. Let's see here. All right, this overhang looks about the same, so I'm going to bring this down to about there. Right. And then I'll do Control Push Pull. I'll go out. So, also I can do this. I can use the Paint Bucket tool and select this material and put it on there. So I don't have to always go back to the photograph. If I've got already on one surface, I can play around with that. I'm going to go ahead and erase this line here. I don't want extra lines. I'm going to push pull this down to about there. Now let's double check a couple things. This is a sliding glass door. It should be about 6 foot wide. So let's just do a tape measure tool right here. So from here to here, it's going to be just shy of 6 foot, and it is 5'9", about 6'8". So it's a little off. It's a little short, but let's see here. Maybe the next image we bring in will fix that. Project photo, override existing materials. Yes, there's something on there. No for trim faces. So we'll just go up. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring in the next image and see if that cleans up a little bit. This might be a little short, and it might happen because of the photograph, right? The photograph is foreshortened. We're playing with geometry, and the more geometry I bring in, the more photographs I bring in, the more these little errors start adding up. But it's not far off. It's a 6 foot door, probably measures 5'10", and this is measuring close to like 5'9". That's not that far off. And I'm guessing that the bottom of the door is about here. It should be 6'8" or something like that, and 6'5". So it's really not that far off. And I'm not building onto this. This is just going to be here for my friend to kind of see the relationship of the new entrance and how it fits in the scheme of things. My last image, File Import. And it's going to be this one here. Again, take a look at what we've got. I've got an angle. I'm going to keep my same origin in this one. I don't need to change it. I'm just taking an angle here. So I'm just going to cancel this a second. I'm going to kind of get it like that. And it's very helpful because if I don't do this, I might actually turn my model upside down. And then it becomes a nightmare to try and orient it back right. So I usually orient myself right and go from there. File, Import. My last picture here is this one. The first thing I do is set up the origin to the model. So this origin is happening at this part of the model. So I'm going to come over here and put it at this part of the photograph. Again, my axes are, the green ones are just not very good. I'm going to do my best to get to it, but I can see right now it's going to be tricky. As I'm moving this, you can see my horizon line changes, everything kind of changes here. So I kind of work on this a little bit here. And if it gets kind of strange or screwy, just start again. Just delete the scene tab, put a new, make a new scene tab, and off you go. This one's even worse in the green. For this going back in this space angle, I'm really going to have to just guess where that is. For the red, a little bit easier. I mean, I can have really nice long lines for the red here. Look at that. Just make sure I'm either above the shadow or below the shadow, or try and be as accurate as I can with when I can. And it really is, kind of tricky there. So I'm going to zoom up on these areas where I do have some chance of getting it right. And then the last thing is to scale it. Now I have a model here with an image already on there. So let's see what I can do. And look, I'm looking at these windows down here. And I'm kind of trying to see if I can line them up. Because now I've changed the view, the angle of the model. And that looks about right. I mean, actually, I had a pretty good guess on the length of this piece here. That looks about right. So I'm going to right click, done. And let's see how we go here. So if I click on this, and I select the surface, right click, project photo, overwrite, yes. And so here's my new door here. Oops. Push pull this up to the ridge. Again, the ridge of the wall. That's what I'm looking for right here, the ridge of the wall. At the wall area. And that looks pretty good, actually. Wow, that's pretty good. I'm going to go out from here out. I'm going to go out as well. Now, this looks like the same kind of overhang. So this was, you know, a 9-inch overhang. So I'm going to go ahead and push pull this back and then go out 9. Push pull this back, go out 9. Take a look at this a second. I'm going to go back to the scene here. I'm just kind of take a look how this is lining up. So this is angling inwards. You see that? I think I need to adjust this just a hair. So here in my match photo, here's the adjustment. I'm just going to see something here. If I change this, does it stand up more? Yeah. See? So let me take a look at this. I'm going to leave this one here. This one's pretty accurately placed. But this one is kind of a guesstimate. Let's kind of play this a little bit. Okay, and then I'll adjust this side here, because now the bottom's a little bit off, right? I mean, the windows are a little bit off here. All right, done. Yeah, now that looking at this line, look how it lines up now, and that's how I guessed on this. But look, see the height is a little different now. So click, project photo, overwrite, yes, overwrite, no trim. All right, so I can pull this down the top. I'm going to again go the 2-inch little fascia here, and then a line down the middle. Again, making sure I'm in the green axis. Select the 2 ends, click on one, hold the control key, click the other one, move in the blue, and make sure you're locking in the blue axis by hitting the up arrow key. Again, don't worry about that triangle forming on the front. It's just how the program is operating right now. And click, and we're angled. That's it. We're done. These angles are good. I've got these construction lines in the model. Let's go to Edit, Delete Guides. That's a quick way of getting rid of all of them. I could use the eraser tool, but it's just so easy going to Edit, Delete Guides. And I think my model's good. Let me make it monochrome. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of these lines back here. And I can see right now I had some funny things going on with my model. So when I push-pull this around, I didn't pay attention to this side as much. I had to push-pull this down as well. And you can see it's just not working right. So I'm just going to undo. Sometimes the best thing you can do is undo and go back to where it was still halfway decent. So I'm going to just double check some things here. I need to push-pull this so it lines up with this side over here. And that's the difference. That's what I didn't do the first time. So when you make a mistake, sometimes just undo. Undo is your friend. Now that I've got that where I need to, now I'll tape measure. Well, I don't even need to tape measure up 2 inches because it's lined up with this. I'm going to use this line as my guide. Do a line here to here. Select one end. Hold the control key. Select the other end. Let go of the control key. The move tool. I'll type in M for move. Up arrow key to lock it in the blue axis. And there you go. That looks much better. And when you make it back to shaded with textures, yeah, there you go. That's about right. All right. I'm going to call that good. Again, just to double check, what's the width of this door here? About 5'10", 5'11". That's about what the door height should be. Oh shoot, but I don't have a really good bottom for this. And that might be right too. 6'8", even though I don't see it. I don't see the bottom door at all. But if you take a look, if you look at these joists and imagine this decking on top, I mean, the joist's about here and the decking's maybe about here, so it's not far off. I think I would call this a very good representation. Again, I can use the eraser tool to get rid of these, or go to Edit, Delete Guides, and the guidelines are all gone. And then what I'll do is I'm going to replace some of these textures. Replace them with just regular SketchUp textures, and then I'm going to try and match the photo of them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm also going to go ahead and finish this roof out. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the roof shapes on. And what I'll do is I'm going to just do a push-pull and get the basic shape, and then use that to create this center portion. I know the slopes here and here are the same, so I can kind of do that really easily. And I like to do gable ends first before I try working on hips or valleys. So push-pull, tap the Control key, and I'm going to go up 4 inches. About a 4-inch fascia that was visible. And you can see my green, my lines are black at an angle. I'm going to create a line from here. I'm going to hover at this level, hold down the Shift key and move my mouse upwards, and then put my cursor over here. And that will get an endpoint that is in line with here. And then I'll just click to set that endpoint. I'm just going to click here, and I have my ridge. Clean up, erase here, erase here, erase here, erase here. So now we've cleaned that all up pretty well. Same thing on this larger roof. Push, tap the Control key, and it's 4-inch, 4-inch. Draw a line from here, and hover, 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 hover. Hold the Shift key to lock it in that angle, and then put your cursor over here, and then click. Go over here, click. Perfect. Push, pull that across. Go ahead and erase these lines. Clean up your model as you go. As a matter of fact, let's look at the back. Yeah, sure enough, clean up the model as you go. That's my mantra. All right, wherever possible, clean up your model. All right, looking pretty good. And I'm going to clean up this back end here. Oops, didn't want to do that. Again, undo's your friend. Can't stress that enough. All right, I think we've got this kind of squared off. Now, this is just straight up and down at an angle. Let's take a look at the photographs real quickly. Yeah, it's not at an angle. They're not at an angle. They're straight up and down. You can see that kind of here, straight up and down. Okay, so we'll do that as well. I'm going to go ahead and draw a line from here straight up in the blue. Push pull that back into space. Draw a line here, straight up in the blue. Push pull that back into space, and I'll have to do it again for here. That perfect. Yep. Again, this doesn't look like it's in the blue. It looks like it's at a weird angle, but because of the perspective, that's what I'm seeing. It is really truly in the blue. So trust the axes. They'll tell you which way to go. And again, having these lines here is really helpful. Okay, well, to get this piece here, what I will do is I'm just going. I'm going to copy this slope and put it in position. So I'm going to select this surface, hold the Control key, select this surface, use the Move tool, tap somewhere and go across, and that's the shape of this slope. Use the Rotate tool, and you can rotate in the blue, the red, or the green, and that changes depending on the axes that I'm pressing on my up, down, left, right keys. I want it in the blue though, so I'm going to click here. That's what I'm going to rotate against there. Then I click another point, and I call it my 0 angle. So that's a 0. So if you had a compass or a protractor and put it down here, that would be the 0 would be. Click. Then I'm going to go across again in the blue, let go of my mouse, type in 90, press enter. Now I could also lock to it. I can snap, because it's in the red axis, I can snap to the red axis, but sometimes I just like to type in the angle. I can verify that it's indeed what it needs to be. Now I'll use the move tool, and I'll grab the midpoint or one of these middle edges. I'm not going to grab an end point because I'm actually going to stretch it across. You'll see what we'll do here. I'll grab a midpoint here, and then I'll put it to the midpoint or the end point of that line right there. So I've actually straddled this piece across this, and then I can then select this edge and use the move tool and come across to here. And then select the edges that are hidden in here. I could either select a surface, right click and hide, or I can use this X-ray mode and I can then see what's inside. See, I can see what's inside the model. So I can select that surface, hold the control key and select that surface, and then use the move tool, and then make sure you lock it in the red, right click, red axis, and then I'm going to move it out to here, and then come back in the red axis to this surface right here. That'll be good enough for what we need to model. I could take X-ray off. Great. It looks like I need to go up a little bit more on this model. And so what I'll do is I will draw myself a line by clicking on this endpoint, hovering at this angle, hold down the shift key, I'm going to go up a distance. I'll go red from here all the way to, hit the right arrow key to this surface. Then I'll go down, and you can see that I've basically created a shape there. I will erase this line and this line. Again, clean up as you go. The next thing I need to do is draw a line from here across, again in the red, to this point. Erase this extra line. Then I'll draw a line from here down in the blue, and then back to the front. And you can see now I have completed that shape. This is pretty much done for what I need to do for modeling. I can get more and more detailed as I go, and I'll show you one little trick, and then I will finish it off and show you the final model, all kind of doctored up and ready for design. There's a lot of lines back here, and for me that's a possibility of getting problems. And the front hasn't really intersected. If you take a look, this roof plane did not really intersect. You see it's like it's light white. There's still, the roof plane's still floating a little bit in the sense, and that was good when we wanted to stretch it out, that it wasn't touching. But now I really want to clean this back. If I start erasing here, I will erase the front pieces. That's not what I want. Select that surface of the roof, right click, intersect faces with model. You can see now the lines have been drawn. This surface has been broken. And I can go ahead then and on the back side here, erase some of these lines that we really don't need anymore. And I'm just doing that because it's good habit to clean up your model. What happens if you don't do this cleanup is you will eventually, by mistake, click something and delete it, and one whole face goes away or something. Not a big deal to redraw it back in, but it's just easier just not to have to deal with that. This roof keeps on going, and it's a pretty steep roof here, but for right now, for modeling purposes, if I do this and show the client this entry, I'll be just fine. I'll be just fine. They don't need to see the whole house in proper. Again, the notion was what's happening at the door area, not so much what's happening with all the other roofs. So how do I keep going with this and clean it up? Because, I mean, we've got like this going on in this front piece. We've got the railing kind of being kind of funny out here. You know, the gutters, I mean, oh, see, now look what happened here. There you go. That's an example of, so I intersect faces with this surface, but not with this surface. And so that didn't clean up. And honestly, I'm not going to want this inside this building, inside this model anyways, but okay. So I'll just go here to here, draw a line in. That brought the surface back in again. And what I'll do is on the back side here, I'm going to go do the X-ray mode, and let me see what other lines are here we don't need. So I don't need these lines in here. This is me being a little fussy, I'll be honest with you. But from experience, things happen. Things happen to models that you didn't expect because there was one line you didn't realize you had in there. So it's just a good idea to clean up. All right, that looks nice and clean. Looks great. Let's put the yeah, perfect. Yeah. So now I'm not, if I draw something, I'm not gonna miss this piece. All right. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I'm going to retexture the model. So I'm going to do this little wing right here, and pretty much it's all the same. So this window is here. I'll do some tape measure lines to get me sorted out. So this tape measure lines, maybe like what, 1.5 maybe. That doesn't look right. Okay, so it looks like it's maybe a 2x6. So I just did that, and this looks like it's going to be about 24 inches or so. That's 26 inches it looks like here. Same thing here. I'll make this a 26 inch. I'm doing kind of rounding off a little bit. And then this part here looks like it's 3.5, give or take 4 inches. So I'm just going to do 4 here. Sometimes if I can't get a parallel line, I'll just pick another point on the model. I'll go up to this point right here, and then again. All right. So with this shape, I'm going to go ahead and then kind of go up to this point right here. That looks like it's 38, and 2 foot there. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do a line tool. So I broke that surface. All right, I broke that surface there. And now I can do the offset tool, right? And that gives me everything. I got this extra line here, but I can erase it later. But then what I can do now is I can select both the glass and this edge, right? And then use the rotate tool, tap the control key, the rotate tool, tap the control key to make a copy in the blue. And this is the midpoint I have, right? Click, go across here, click, and I made a copy. So now I'll just type in 180, and there it is. Now, again, I lost a little bit of it, but that's okay. I'll just draw back in with my line tool. And then I can go ahead and start erasing some of these extra lines. So hopefully this will be halfway decent. And it's looking pretty good. Right click, reverse faces to make all the front faces thing. And that's kind of good. Let me look at the image. Does it work the image? That's not far off from the image, right? Again, we're working with an image, construction, something's a little bit off. You really can't have it all, but this is pretty good. Do a tape measure line for the corner boards, which look like they're 2x6s. So I'm just going to do it 6 inches. I could do 5.5, but I'll be honest, again, we just going to get it going. So if I look at it in monochrome mode, I've broken the surfaces up. I've got the corner boards, I've got the window and all this. Let's go to Edit, Delete Guides, get them all out of the way. And actually at this point, I'm going to go back to my Styles menu. And at this point, I think I'm just going to go ahead and not worry about the axis orientation on my lines. So it's all the same. So that looks pretty good. What I would do is I make a component of this window and then mirror it over here, copy and mirror over here. I would push pull this out 3/4 of an inch. Double click here to repeat that. Push pull it out. I must have snapped to something. All right. For this overhang, I'm going to take a look at the image again and go back to this image. Maybe this one. There you go. And I'm just going to push pull it out. And it looks like it's maybe it's like, I'll say 6-inch overhang. All right. So again, let's go to monochrome mode. So that's looking pretty real here. All right. Let's do the 6-inch overhang on this roof. Let's try this again. There you go. Now this roof is kind of special because it has this piece extending out. Let's look at this image here. You can see it goes out quite a bit. It goes out about 4 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw myself a line at this ridge right here. And then select here, and I'm going to go out until it's about matching. I think this is about 48 inches out. I'll use my tape measure tool. I'm going to go out in the green, 48 inches. So I've got something to snap to. I'm going to use the move tool. So select this point, use the move tool. And I'm going to go out in the green until I snap to that line. Let me just double check with the image. And that looks about right. Maybe it could go out a little bit more. Maybe, let's see. Let's see if I'm going to move this out, let's say 6 inches, what's that looking like? Much better alignment anyways. I'm going to call that one right. I know it may or may not be, but I'm going to just call that one what it is. We'll just call that good. Edit, delete guides. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish this example of this piece. So I'm going to go ahead, I have a texture here. I'm going to make a little rectangle on the surface. Matter of fact, I might as well just make it go from seam to seam, you know, from edge of lap to edge of lap. And I'll go use my materials here in my tray. I'm going to select siding. So we have brick cladding and siding. And I'm going to click this white siding to start with. And I'm going to select and hit the surface right here. Done. So now I've got a material here that I want it to match the existing. I'm going to select that material, right click, texture, position, and I have these grips. So I'm going to put this grip here at the corner of this box, and this grip, these grips here can be changed so they can go independently, or they each have their own function. So red is for move, the green is for scale and rotate, the blue and the yellow are for skew and for warp, depending on how your image comes in, you want to straighten it out. So by moving this, the texture will repeat itself at this intersection, and sure enough, we want it to do that, right? Because we've made the square on our surface line up. And then I'm going to use the scale rotate tool to come in until the image of my paint matches the lines here. So I know now it's the same scale. Again, it might be off by a little bit. These are all raster images, but this looks good. I can make it larger, smaller. I could also, if I go up or down, I can rotate it. Now that we don't need to do that here, but I could rotate it. This looks pretty good. It looks like everything's lining up right. So I'm going to right click, done. So I got the scale correct. So now I have to change the color. It is already selected. If not, I would use this eyedropper here in the materials tool and select it. Then I click on the edit window here. And this edit window, I have it set to HLS, but you can have different things. I think color wheel is the default. I find that too hard to work with. So I like HLS, hue, lightness, and saturation. It really is very helpful to me how I think it through. I want this to match this piece here, color-wise. And so I really have a lot of them to choose from. Looking at how this model is laid out, this really is how I imagine the color of this particular siding. This looks kind of green because there's a lot of trees out here right in front, and it's reflecting a lot of that vegetation. This might also be a good color to choose from. So it's basically one of these three areas. I wouldn't choose this to match. Again, it just isn't quite that dark. Look, this looks kind of bright. Let's try this one to start with. So I'm going to use the eyedropper. Now these two eyedroppers, one is the average color of the material. So that's not what I want for this particular case, because the average color of this whole thing includes the dark here and the shadow over here and then the light over here and the green down here as well and the red. And no. I'm going to use this one, whatever color on the screen. So it's the actual pixel I end up picking will be what I'm going to use. So I'm going to say about there. You can see it changed that color a little bit. If I want a different pixel, like if I pick this one, you know, it'll turn dark, right? It's whatever pixel I'm looking at. So I'm just going to pick one that I feel comfortable with. And I'll say that's it. Now that I've got the color matched, now that I've got the siding in place, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take a look at some of these pictures as well. Let's take a look at these pictures as well. Yeah, it is this taupey kind of color. It is this kind of brownish hued colored. So I'm going to go ahead and select this surface, this texture, and then I'm just going to paint the surface. Right? And you can see right away, I can just keep on going around the whole thing. For this vertical piece, I can either paint the surface on here and then select right-click texture position and basically rotate it 90 degrees. And then just if I click and drag the image, I can just kind of put it in the middle there. Done. The value of that is there is a little bit of change in this texture, so you'll have some variation. I could also just use a color. I can also use a color and just paint the color on there. So that's the other possibility. Either one's fine. And again, now that I've gotten this taken care of, I can just select these lines. So I double-click the surface and the edge, use the Shift key to hold it down, and select one click to delete the edge, and then the delete key to erase it. So I'm going to do this whole building the same way. Add a roof color on here that matches kind of the roof texture that they have, and show you the final piece. So the model is pretty well retextured. You can see now that we don't have all those crazy things. There's a couple of items I wanted to bring to your attention. I kind of didn't finish texturing everything, but one thing is that the roof is actually was not modeled quite right. This soffit really goes down to here. So again, you don't have to start from scratch every time. I'm just going to select this surface, hold the control key, select this surface, use the move tool in the blue axis, and just kind of bring it down. Same thing over here. Select this surface, use the move tool, click this point, and in the blue, tap it down. So now we've got the right depth of the fascia and the right location. And I noticed that when I was starting to work with the gutters here, right? And I just started noticing that, wait a second, this wasn't quite working out right with our gutter. Now all these pieces, the frames, the corner boards, and all this, I made corner boards components. I made frames components, made doors components. This light I created from another light from the 3D warehouse. I adjusted it. Made it look like this one. So it's really close. This is the back area here. Let's change that out. So we have this this all the way around. Fantastic. So now we've got that laid out. And now we don't have any strange shadows or plants that we don't want. And I'll be able to model this entry pretty well. The one last thing I want to show you is this gutter. I have this little gutter profile that I've created. And I'm going to use a thing called the Follow Me tool to just make it kind of go around. I've positioned it roughly where this one's positioned. So in other words, if I look at this image, this one's here, and this one's about the same location. Now it's a little bit off, but it's good with my model. what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this line and this end of the gutter that I have. Right click, make component. I'm going to make it, give it a name that makes sense. I'll call it gutter 2. Because I've got a gutter over here with its downspout. So I'm just going to have the gutter set over here on this side. Double click to get into the component. And I'll select this line and this line that I had copied. So these are all copied. And this is the piece I also copied. Then I'll use the follow me tool. Looks like this. And I'll click on this surface. And it kind of wraps itself around. I can go ahead and erase these lines. Now I had to copy the lines because that's the path it's going to take. And I also noticed that it kind of shrunk up a little bit, so I'm going to do push-pull here and make sure that the distance out is the same as on this side. In addition, sometimes this happens with arcs and such with the Follow Me tool, so I'll just soften this up using the Eraser tool. Erase with the Control key, hold the Control key down, and then click and drag on this. That softens the edge. Right, so it's nice and smooth. That's what I expect to see here. Same thing on this end here. Kind of go down this way. All right. So now that's pretty much right. I know that the height is right. I'll just double check it here. If I use the Move tool and go up in the blue and just make sure the height's right there, then I will just kind of move this up in the blue so it touches. So we've got this one and this one in place. This one, looking at one of these images, again, I'm looking at these images for ideas. This one kind of does this kind of movement down. So I will copy this downspout and gutter from the top of the roof here to the top of the roof there. So we've got something that we can start with. And then instead of creating a whole new component, because what I do to this one is going to happen to this one. This is a component. Whatever I do to one, do to the other. I'll just use the scale tool. I'll just scale this down. Something like this. Again, I don't know how far back it really goes. This roof does die into this other roof. I know that, but I just don't know how far back this gutter goes. I'm going to call that good for now. And then I just need to adjust this a little bit. So this one, I'm going to have to right click, make unique. I need to make this component of gutter unique. This one and this one are symmetrical. No problem. This one is going to be unique. And then I'll just look at the photograph real quick and see how they laid it out. So it came up against the building instead of on the side like this. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to double check too. Look, well, it looks like the gutter still hangs out a bit. So, but it looks like it's up higher. So we'll select both of these, use the Move tool, and go up in the axis there. I'll just probably line up with the top of the roof here like that. Let's see. All right. So then the only other thing is this has to come in. And I made it unique already, so I can go ahead and get in here and modify it. Now, I need to get to the right angle for this thing. Look straight on, perhaps. Because what I want to do is I want to grab all of these, but not grab this piece here. Use the Move tool. I'm going to go, it looks like it went like this. Right? It's lined up with that piece. And I also think that this whole thing moved in, so it's more flush with that end. And then I could probably just leave it like this, or if I really want to be super exact, again, for this modeling, I think it's like almost over modeling right now, but we can probably create a line right here, and then push-pull that back, erase any stray lines that are left over. I'm going to want this gutter to eventually end up here. And so I'll push-pull this up a little bit. I'm going to do Control Push-Pull. And I'll just move this in the green so it lines up with this. Move this over in the red so it lines up with this. And that really is pretty good. I mean, when we model, there's going to be some Make sure that everything's lined up pretty well. I want to be able to erase some of these lines that we don't need. This I'm going to move down just a little bit. Okay, erasing these lines here. Before I call this model finished, I'd like to get that Soffit pattern to happen here and here in the model, and also in the underside of this area too, the Soffit in this area. I'm going to use the same texture and make a new one to match. So in other words, I've got this image here. Again, nice lines here I can follow. I'm going to go ahead and just draw a line from here to here. Draw another line from here to here. And that's going to be my guiding width to match. I'm going to go ahead and use the same texture that I had turned into my siding, and I'll hit this little plus button. So I'll click on here, hit the plus button, it creates a new texture. I'm going to call this one Soffit. And I'm also going to make it go back to the reset the color, the original color, which is a white. If you remember that cladding was white. Click OK. I'm just going to paint on that surface. And so I've got the lines there now. Select that. Right click, texture, position. And I'm just going to put my endpoint there. And I'm just going to keep going in until the lines kind of match. And that looks really close, right? That looks pretty good. Right click, done. I can now erase these lines. I don't need them. And I can use using the paint bucket with the Alt key pressed to select that material, and I can paste it elsewhere in the model. Now this went the wrong way, right? It's going the other way, so select texture position, and I'm just going to go along. Now as you notice, there's these little arcs that are created. This is actually little points. You want to be on this inner arc always, and it'll snap to the red axis, but you want inner arcs always because this will be twice as big. And this is be the exact same size, just a different angle. Done. Select that surface there. Paint here the underside. Paint the other underside. And that's good. There's actually a little straight piece there that's not, but I think for this model, this is enough modeling and enough to give the client something to look at, and it's going to be pretty real in what they need. One other thing I did is I did paint the inside of the model dark so that when you look through these windows it looks dark, and on a sunny day, you know, windows tend to look dark, so that should work out okay too. But this was made up basically out of 4 images, and although it may not be 100% to the half-inch perfect, it is pretty darn close. If you click on these images here, it's pretty darn close. One last thing to make the model smaller. In the materials section, we see all the photographs that are there. And so if there's any photographs that are here, just right click and delete and say yes. Nothing should disappear because we've covered them all up with new textures, right? And we don't need these scene tabs anymore, so we can delete them. It'll make the file a little bit smaller. I think that would be fine. And one last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select the whole model that I have to this point. Right click, make component, and I'm going to call it the existing. I can also call it the residence, perhaps, something like this. And then I'm going to right click and lock. So when you make a component, you can right click and lock the component. So now I can model against this. I can erase, I can draw whatever I need to do and move it, and it's not going to affect this piece. I won't be able to grab this by mistake. It's a good tip to do. So I'm ready to start modeling the design. Hope this little tutorial was helpful for you for photo matching. Thank you for watching.